Now, who doesn't have one of these cheap pieces of sitting around the office? God. Now, who doesn't have one of these little beauties sitting around the shop? You know you did. You know you went down to Harbor Freight and you got yourself one too. And I'm sure if you did, you're just as aggravated with the darn thing as I am. So with that said, I am going to try to make my own that's a little more sturdy and the handles don't come apart every time I use it and holds the dies a lot better. So let's go see what we can do with this thing.
So I'm starting with my base material here is cast iron off of a weightlifting machine. Got it at a local scrapyard. This has worked really well for me, learning how to mill and machine. It's a lot easier to work with than some of the harder tool steels and even mild steel. So I used old Krusty there to kind of get me a baseline of how big it needs to be, and what I'm going to do is just use the bandsaw and hack it out of there and get it on the mill and start cutting it up. We'll go ahead and get it over here to the mill. Get everything squared up and faced up. It's got a bunch of bumps and chunks and things like that on it. So I'm going to go ahead and, after I quit knocking the parallels over, go ahead and get this thing squared up, and we can go ahead and start getting it to dimension. One thing that I've learned, you don't really need to use lube when you're doing cast iron. It really makes just a big old mess when you use it. So toward the end of the project, as I started learning these things, I quit using the lube on it, and it was so much easier to clean up. I don't necessarily like the mess that it makes when I'm cutting it, but that cast iron just cuts like butter. It's so easy to machine. Of course, it doesn't get as shiny as tool steel or even mild steel for that matter, but man, it's easy on the bits and it's easy to cut. So since I've got a small mill, I'm running conventional. So I'm just going around in circles, removing the most amount of material that I can in the most efficient way that I can. And then when I'm done with it, what I'll do is I'll just make side-to-side passes to make it as clean as I can. But right there, I'm running back over it just to make sure I got everything good, and it's cleaning up very well. So just going to flip it on to the next side and continue on getting it squared up. Oh, that WD-40 is bad. Oh, I wish I hadn't have done that. Now we'll deburr it one more time, and then we'll get it over to the mill and get our pilot hole drilled so we can then move it over to the lathe and do the counter bore on the lathe. I don't have a boring head on my mill, so I'm just going to use a boring bar on the lathe. Now I'm going to get the center finder out, and I bet you have no idea what a center finder does. But anyway, I'm going to get center found. I'll go ahead and drill a pilot hole over here, and then I'll take it over to the lathe and drill it out to 1/2 inch with a drill, and then move on up to the boring bar. So now I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to use a 1, 2, 3 block. and get the boring bar squared up to the work, to the lathe. And then got a pretty interesting setup here. It's pretty interesting to me, being a rookie coming up with it. But basically what I did is I set up 2 dial calipers, one for my depth of cut and then one for the diameter. And you'll see this coming up here. And it turned out really well. I actually, to be honest with you, this is the first time I've ever really hit my dimensions dead on. As you can see here, what I'm doing is double checking the dimensions on that die. And, it's measuring there, if you can see it, about 350 thou. And, I wanted to leave it a little proud, but now looking back at it, I wish I had have countersunk it, because I ran into a problem with, I wanted to use a set screw that went into one of the holes instead of the slot that runs across the top of it. I mean, it worked fine, but what happened is because I think I left it about 3 or 4 thousandths proud. It got me right on the edge for drilling the hole for the set screw. And so what I had to do is wind up using the slot that goes all the way across the die, but at least I was able to work my way out of it. So here you can see my setup I've got with the dial indicators. I was pretty proud of this. That that took a lot of forethought for me to get that done and make that happen, and I was really excited about that. And at one point in the video, I think you can hear me. I'll stop it during that part. But what I was having to do is, as I was going into the bore, I would catch it as it got to 0, and then I would count it each time as it went around. So basically what I was doing is 1, 2, 3, stop, and then finish out to the end of the cut. But yeah, it turned out pretty good. And I thought that since I don't have a DRO on the lathe, that turned out pretty good. So now I'll get it back over to the mill and get the basic shape roughed out and try to get all these facets to match up. So what I'm doing here is I'm getting 0 off the top of it by doing the math to get it the thickness that I wanted. It looked like I needed to take off about 245 thousandths. So what I'm doing is I'm setting my 0 on top of it right now, and then I'm going to dial in the 245 thousandths, and then what I'll do is I'll start cutting down to 0. As you can see, I finally figured out the smart thing to do is not to use the WD-40 on this stuff, and it's a whole lot better to clean up. So right here I'm checking the thickness of the back wall of the die wrench. I was looking for a 1/4 inch is what I was looking for between the tap and the back, and I nailed it. However, I was shooting for 600 thousandths on overall thickness, and I came up at 595 and a half. So What is that, 4.5 I missed by? But hey, that's still good for me. Now I'm finding the center of these ends so I can get the holes drilled and get them tapped to get the handles in there once I get those made. What I did here is on the flat sides, that's easy to find the center. But the other ones, obviously they're sloped. So what I did is I set my Z-axis, zeroed it, and then what I did is I came down to the same elevation on both sides. And since it was squared up in the same angle on both sides, then even though that was a sloped surface, I was able to find the center. Now I'm going to get my calipers out, and first I'm going to get the drill bit put in there. But then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it out from under the head, and I'm going to use my calipers to measure the depth to see how deep I want to do that bore, to make sure that I don't intrude into the tab holding area, but still get enough thread in there to hold the handle. So what I came up with is I need to go in at least a half inch. Well, I'm going in a half inch from the nose into the body of the die wrench. I really would have liked to have gotten it a little deeper than that, but that was the best I could do. So we'll see. Now that I have the primary features milled into it, we'll start shaping it and try to get some actual shape to it, so it doesn't look like just a big diamond block. So I had this grand idea in my head. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna put a piece of stock in there and chuck it up, and then I'll turn it with the lathe. And yeah, no, that didn't work out well at all. So then I said, well, I'll use the lathe to hold it in place, and I'll start working it. So as you'll see, this doesn't work out so great either, and I came up with a lot better idea later on. And no, this ain't it. After a little bit of this mess, I decided I would give it a break and go work on the handles because this was getting absolutely ridiculous. So now I'm back over at the lathe. We'll go ahead and get started on these handles. I lost some of my footage. I've got a lot of this where I was cutting them down and threading them and things like that, but I lost the footage of where I was shaping the handles and knurling them. The camera memory got full, didn't realize it, and lost a lot of work, but I'll recreate some of it later. And like I said earlier, it's not as many threads as I wanted, but it's going to work just fine. I had to come in and trim the shoulder a little bit and trim the ends off of them just to get a good, nice, snug fit. It bottoms out good and the shoulders make contact. So here they are with the threads cut on them. They're not, like I said, the threads aren't as long as I wanted, but it's going to work. Now here's where the filming went off the rails. I was getting all set up to start turning these handles down. It's giving me some tailstock support. Got everything ready to go. Started turning the handles and everything. And then when I went back and looked at the video, I had run out of memory space. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm trying to demonstrate what I did. Now obviously I didn't have the knurled ends in the chuck. What I did is I left the handles a little long and put those in the chuck, gave myself some tailstock support, and then I turned the handles down and then knurled the ends. And then when I was done, then I sanded and shaved the ends off nice and smooth. That sucks. Now I'm going to go over and do some more work on it. This is how I actually got, ahead on the stupid thing was I started using the belt sander, and I was like, why in the world was I trying to turn that on the lathe when I had a belt sander over there? So right now I'm going in, knocking some meat off of it, and I think that's a 60 grit belt. And then I'll go back and clean it up with some 500 because I don't have any 320. So anyway, that's how I wound up getting a good shape on it using the belt sander and my head. Now I'm going to start getting it set up to put the set screw in there, the little grub screw to hold the die in. And here's where I figured out that I should not have left it running a little proud out the front. I don't know it at this point yet, but I'm checking it out and I'm looking at the distance and I'm like, oh boy. So when I get over to the mill, I try to do it anyway, and I'm like, yeah, I can make it work, and nah, it's too close. So as you'll see what I do here in just a second to make it work. Yeah, that'll be a big old can of nope. So I'm just gonna mill me a little flat spot in there and back it up a little bit, and give me a good place to go in with the drill bit, and we'll be good to go from that point. So it looks like it turned out pretty good. It's a whole lot better than that thing to the right. Um, it looks pretty decent. It looks like it's going to be really functional. It's really sturdy. It's a whole lot more sturdy than that thing. And you can see some of the finish on it. You know, I've got a lot of work to do learning how to finish steel. Probably just need a lot more patience on it. But the set screw works good. It's nice and shiny. Some of the work I need to do on the knurling. I didn't have that set up right. I learned a lot about that on this project. And then I've got some striations in the steel from the cutting tools. Got the ends rounded off nice, but pretty much it turned out really good. I'm really happy with it. And for my first really complicated project, it's turned out really good. So hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you saw something that maybe inspired you to do something, and maybe gave you some ideas for your own projects. If you did, like and subscribe, yada yada yada. Until next time.